Welcome into Silent the Courtside. My name is Zach, and today I have my biggest NFL draft losers from this year's NFL draft. Last week I posted my biggest winners, and today I have my biggest losers. Now, I do want to disclaim that this is not an indictment on any of these players. I have nothing against these players. I think these are really good, solid players, but I just think that these teams could have addressed their needs more, or maybe just made different moves that would have fit their team better. But this is not an indictment on any of these guys or like a personal attack on any of these players at all. So, our first team, I chose the Jacksonville Jaguars. They made 10 selections. They didn't have a first round pick. They traded away to the Browns and that Travis Hunter trade in the 2025 NFL draft. But their first pick was pick number 56 in the second round, and they took Nate Boerkircher, the Texas A&M tight end. This is a guy that, again, I have nothing against him personally, but I don't really see the value here. He's primarily a blocking tight end. He only had 517 career receiving yards, only 19 catches in 2025, and he is a good blocker. That's primarily what he's going to be there for. And I think this year kind of showed a push towards blocking tight ends in the NFL. You saw a bunch of guys go in that like second, third, fourth round. They went maybe a little higher than many thought, and they were primarily blocking tight ends rather than receiving tight ends. Definitely seeing teams run a lot more 12 and 13 personnel than we are used to. And so I think this is like one of the main showcases of that shift per se. He has like an average punch. He's a good lead blocker though. If you get him in motion, coming to the hole, I think he's really good. But I just think at pick 56, your first pick of the draft, I didn't really see the value here. And then with Albert Regis, his teammate from Texas A&M, he's an interior defensive lineman. They took him at pick 81. Also in no, this was in the third round. Excuse me. He's 6'1", 295. He has a good low center of gravity. He's not the biggest guy ever. He struggles against like long blockers. He doesn't have a lot of length, a little bit shorter arms. Now, arm length isn't as important with interior defensive linemen versus edge rushers. Edge rushers, the arm length is a really, really big deal, but the interior guys, not quite as much. But it does still matter on some level. He's not a super productive pass rusher. He's definitely more of a run stuffing type of defensive tackle. He plays the run well. I would expect him to be a rotational guy in 2026. I wouldn't expect him to play, a starting role. I see him come in, third down, the goal line packages, plays where it gets obvious they're going to run the ball. But I do think he has a bigger role coming up soon. Armstead's contract expires after this year, and so I would expect coming up, 2027 and beyond, he gets a bit of a bigger role when he's a little bit more developed and spots open up. My favorite pick from the Jags, though, was Emmanuel Pregnon. I thought this was an excellent selection at pick number 88, also in the third round. He slipped a lot more than I thought he would. He's the guard from Oregon. Like I said, I think this is their best pick of the draft. Really good value. He's 6'4", 314. He was first team All Big Ten in 2025. He's a 4-year starter, tons of experience. But I wouldn't expect him to start in 2026. The Jags guard situation seems pretty squared away for this year, so I would expect him to not play much, if at all, this year. But definitely a great guy for the future. A lot of upside. He has good footwork. He does have a tendency to struggle against faster defenders, but I think him being inside at guard will kind of mask that issue. And like I said, he's probably not going to start this year, so he has plenty of time to work on things like that. But yeah. And then in the sixth round, they had a pretty big gap here between picks. Sixth round, they took back-to-back receivers, Josh Cameron from Baylor, C.J. Williams from Stanford. Both these guys probably I wouldn't expect to play much in the rotation this year. Probably I would expect more of a special teams type of contribution from these guys. But yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be like in any sort of starting role. Kind of like I said in my last video in the winners, once you get to like the fifth, sixth, seventh round, you're not really looking for like every down guys. You're really looking for guys that play in certain packages or special teams players. More depth pieces. You're not expecting. Obviously, it's great when a late round player does turn out amazing. Puka Nacua, Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. Obviously, everybody knows that. So it's amazing that does happen, but to expect that is definitely a bit bullish. And so you're not really looking for anything crazy out of these late round guys. You're able to take a bit more risks. So, and then I'm going to go out of order here a little bit here. They took Tanner Kozol, I hope I pronounced that right, the Houston tight end in the 5th round. He's definitely the antithesis of Nate Boerkircher. He's the receiving tight end. He had 74 receptions last year in 2025 at Houston. He had 94 in 2024, the year before. He's 6'7", 240, huge target. We'll have to see what he becomes, but he's definitely, like I said, the opposite of Boerkircher. Boerkircher is that blocking tight end, not a lot of receiving upside. However, Tanner is definitely a much bigger receiving threat, but needs to work on the blocking a little bit more. And so that's it for the Jags. We move on to our next team. I have the Vikings. They made 9 picks. Their first pick was Caleb Banks at 18. I addressed this in my last mock draft where I wanted the Vikings to take an interior defensive lineman. I wanted to get them an interior defensive lineman at pick 18, but I didn't feel any of those interior defensive linemen were worth it at pick 18. And I mentioned Caleb Banks specifically, and my biggest concern with Banks is the injuries. He's had foot injuries a lot of his career. He only played 3 games in 2025. He looked to be like a surefire top 15 pick coming into the season. However, injuries kind of set it back a little bit. I thought they were setting back a lot more than it did. He ended up going to pick 18 here. I just think safety is probably an equally large hole on this team. And Dylan Thieneman is right there. I was very shocked that they passed on Dylan Thieneman. I think he fit that defense perfectly. He'd be the perfect Harrison Smith replacement. But they went with Caleb Banks. A bit surprising to me. If they were to take an interior defensive lineman there, I would have preferred them take Caden McDonald, in my opinion, or Peter Woods. I honestly like Peter Woods ever so slightly more than Caleb Banks. I do still really like Banks. I think he has the potential to be a great interior defensive lineman and can live up to this 18th overall pick expectation, if you want to call it, that's going to be put on him. But it's just the foot injuries do concern me. That worries me. I'm definitely a bit hesitant on a guy like that. Being that size and having that many lower body injuries would make me hesitate a little bit. But overall, not a terrible pick, but definitely not one of my favorites. And then in the second round, they take Jake Golday. Golday is the linebacker from Cincinnati. I do really like Golday. I think he's one of the top 5 linebackers in this class. However, I really like CJ Allen. CJ Allen is my clear number 2 linebacker in this class, or 3, depending on how you classify Arvell Reese, if you want him as a linebacker or an edge rusher. But I think out of the true stand-up inside linebackers, Sonny Styles was my number 1, and CJ Allen was number 2. I could not believe CJ Allen fell to where he did. I believe he was picked just 3 picks after this at pick 54 or 53. It was directly after Golday. And Anthony Hill is also still available. I do really like Anthony Hill. Him and Golday are kind of interchangeable for me. But yeah, I like the Golday pick, but I just felt there were better options available, especially with CJ Allen specifically. And then if the Vikings took Hill or Golday, I wouldn't have really had an issue with either. But I would have just preferred to see CJ Allen here. He fell just a little bit more past Golday. And then they took Dominique Orange. His nickname is Big Citrus. He's the Iowa State interior defensive lineman. So they go 2 interior guys in the first 3 picks. He's 6'2", 322. He's primarily like a nose or like a zero tech, line up directly over the center. He's not really like a 2 or 3 tech, play a little bit more like on the guard. He's definitely a run stuffing player. I don't think he's, an every down player. I think he'd mainly be, goal line packages and obvious run downs. He eats up double teams. He's really good at sitting there just eating up space and clogging holes. And so that's why he's such a great run stuffer. He's not a great pass rusher. He's not very quick. He does have a tendency sometimes to get washed down. He doesn't have amazing balance, but still really good. He's eat up space, great for goal line packages and, like field goal block. I think those are things he would excel at. And then they took Max Bredesen at pick 159. I didn't love this pick. He's played fullback pretty much like primarily in Michigan, like a fullback, H-back type of role. I think that's what he will play for the Vikings. He was drafted as a tight end, but he's likely going to play a fullback type of role, like that CJ Ham role for the Vikings. He's 6'2", 252. He is a great lead blocker, and I think that's why he's going to be put at fullback and not tight end. He only has 12 career receptions, not much of a receiving threat. He is a tough guy. Like, he was hurt late in the year at Michigan. He toughed it out in a lot of those games. He even suited up for the Ohio State game. He was on crutches walking into the arena, walking into the stadium, and ended up suiting up for the game. He didn't play much, if at all, if my memory serves. But very tough guy. Definitely a guy you would want as a fullback. He has that great mentality. But I just feel like a fullback here at 159 didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, especially some of the other needs, like safety. They still hadn't taken a safety up until this point. Or no, excuse me, they did. They took Jacoby Thomas 98. That is my bad. But still, this is what I get for going out of order here. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't love this pick. I thought there were better options available, such as the guy that took at 198, Damon Claiborne, the Wake Forest running back. This is a halfback, not a fullback, and this was a glaring need for them. I think, Aaron Jones, who knows how much longer he has left, or what is really left in the tank for him, or Jordan Mason, guys like that. They need a running back of the future. I don't know if Damon Claiborne is quite that. I don't think he's a long-term answer. It took him at pick 198, pretty late. He had a really solid college career. He was second team All ACC last year. Very quick. He ran a 4.37 40. Definitely a bit undersized. He's only 5'10", 188. But he does bring good special teams value. He returned kicks and punts. But he doesn't have to be limited to that. I think he could make an impact in the running game, especially if something were to happen to Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason. Regardless, I think he definitely has the potential to be, a full-time running back at some point. He doesn't have to be, a special teams guy. But I think the size, he's only being 5'10", 188, could hold him back. But like I said, great speed. He had really good college production as well. And so I went a bit out of order here. Now we're coming back to their back-to-back picks at the end of round 3 with Caleb Tiernan at 97. Tiernan's 6'8", but he has short arms, so that kind of limits his ability to play tackle. I think he would play more guard for the Vikings. But they just drafted Donovan Jackson last year in the first round at guard. And so not that I didn't love this pick. I thought this was a fine pick, but I do have questions about where he's really going to fit in and if they would just put him at tackle. And, he has great height, but just the shorter arms could give him issues playing tackle against some of those long edge rushers. And Jacoby Thomas, they finally addressed that safety need at pick 98 right after Tiernan. They needed safety help really badly. I still don't really understand why they passed on Thieneman. They obviously know better than me. I'm not going to act like I know better than NFL GMs. But I think they would have been better off with Thieneman at 18 and one of those defensive linemen at 51. But regardless, take Jacoby Thomas, the Miami safety, at pick 98. Not a bad pick by any means. Definitely addressed a big need for them. I just felt that they would have been better off with Thieneman earlier in the draft. For our final team, we have the Rams. They only made 5 picks. They're definitely a team known for trading away their picks for current players, which is not bad. I mean, won the Super Bowl a few years ago. So, but for a team with such win now expectations, and their Super Bowl window is open right now, but it won't be forever. I would have expected them to address more win now type of players. I thought they would have taken a lot more players that could make an immediate impact, especially at pick 13. They traded away pick 29 to the Chiefs for Trent McDuffie. I love that trade for both those teams. But they kept pick 13, and they took Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback. This was the most shocking pick of the draft to me and to many people, I believe. Ty Simpson doesn't have a lot of experience, only 15 starts. So I do think he is a first-round worthy quarterback. I think Ty Simpson can be, a top half of the league quarterback one day. But I didn't see the value of him here at 13, and especially to the Rams at 13. They could have gotten a guy like Kenyon Sadiq or Makai Lemon were both still available. Players that can make an immediate impact on the team this year. Even Monroe Freeling was still available. So I think there were a bunch of different directions that they could have gone. They could have made a immediate impact on the team this year and could help their Super Bowl window now. But they have to go with Ty Simpson. He's obviously not going to play right away. Instead of Matthew Stafford, the reigning NFL MVP. And so I am excited to see how they develop Simpson. I think Simpson could definitely benefit 1000% from sitting a year or two. And I think this is a good spot for Simpson. I think he will definitely benefit from this and flourish from this, but especially be able to sit behind Matthew Stafford. But I didn't really see the value in it on the Rams side of things in terms of getting him now, especially at pick 13, rather than if they traded up late. Obviously, they don't have a lot of picks to trade up, but if they traded in late in the first and took him, I would have been totally fine with that. Especially, they had to pick 29 before. If they took him at 29, that would have made a lot more sense than pick 13. But regardless, they take Simpson at 13. Then they took Max Clear at 61 in the second round, the Ohio State tight end. He is a big receiving threat. He had some slight trouble with drops at Purdue, but he cleaned it up last year at Ohio State. The Rams ran 13 personnel, 31% last year, which is shocking. That's the most ever recorded. They only started tracking it in 2010 now. But since then, it's the highest usage of 13 personnel. I kind of touched on that with the Jags pick of Nate Borkacher. Teams have really started to run more 12, 13 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, or three tight ends, that is. And so, again, I think Claire is another piece for the future. He will help the team, a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But as far as this year and this current Super Bowl window, I don't see the value of Max Clay. I don't see him making an impact on the Rams right away. Which is, again, just a team with such a wide open Super Bowl window. And they were so close last year. They lost in the NFC Championship to the eventual winners, Seattle Seahawks. I was very surprised with the path they took in these first two picks. And they picked 93 late in the third round. They went with Keegan Trost, the Missouri right tackle. This is a very experienced guy. He's played 7 years of college football. He's 25 years old. Played at 3 programs, 2 FCS teams, and then Missouri. He has a bit of a holding issue. Some penalties. He gets a little sloppy sometimes. But, nothing that isn't fixable. I definitely could see him being a starting tackle for this team in the future. He's 6'5", 311. He has really good size. So I didn't mind this pick by any means. Definitely could make an earlier impact with him being so old, so experienced. He could be a little bit more NFL ready. They had a huge gap between picks. Their next pick was at pick 197. They took C.J. Daniels, the Miami wide receiver. He's 6'2", 202. He has pretty solid footwork. He's not super fast. He's not really going to run by you. He's not going to burn anybody. But he makes difficult catches. He makes, those acrobatic catches. He's not overly dynamic. Again, at pick 197, I believe this is the 6th round by now. You're not looking for your wide receiver 1 or your wide receiver 2 of the future by any means. I don't see a lot of special teams value with Daniels. He's not super fast. So yeah, I wouldn't expect him to return kicks or return punts. But, late in the draft, who knows what he could develop into. The Rams developed wide receivers. Puka Nacua they took in the 4th round. And he's a top 2, possibly top 1 receiver in the league. So I'm going to trust the Rams with that one. And then their final pick, like I said, they only had 5 picks in this whole draft, was Tim Keenan III, the Alabama interior defensive lineman. He's 6'1", 327. He has 30.5-inch arms, which isn't very long at all. But he's not the biggest guy. He's only 6'1". He has a low center of gravity, which helps with interior defensive linemen, helps with pad level, things like that. He does struggle to locate the ball in the backfield sometimes. He gets to the line and then he kind of gets caught, looking around, can't really find the ball. But with coaching and stuff, those are all fixable things. But yeah, so that's it for the Rams class. Very small class. They definitely seem to be building towards the future, especially those first two picks. But I didn't think that's really what they needed to be doing right now. I think they could have upgraded their team more for this year and the year after. However long Matthew Stafford has left, and that core of players, Davante Adams, isn't getting any younger either. So overall, not a terrible class for the Rams, just small, and I didn't think addressed all their needs, and didn't. This class had potential for them, especially the way the board fell in the first round, with Lemon and Sadiq and Freeling all still available. They passed on all three. I didn't love that for the Rams, but yeah, that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you have any of your own losers or winners, or if you disagree with anything I said, just please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what I can do better for next video. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.